Y'all already know who it is, man. It's your boy, Underrated Major. Today I'll be doing a video discussing 5th generation Dragonslayers explained. Now, when it comes to Fairy Tail, the 5th generation Dragonslayers, they are fairly new, so a lot of people, whenever they are brought up or whenever they're talked about, they're left in the dark and they don't really know too much about them. But today I'm going to be doing a video explaining the 5th generation Dragonslayers and why these guys could be the biggest threat to Fairy Tail that we've seen so far. Yes, the 5th generation Dragonslayers, they might end up being the end of Fairy Tail. Now, before we actually get into it, I just want to talk about Dragonslayers briefly because there has been a lot of disrespect going around on Dragonslayers. Like, people, they've said commonly that, yo, even though that Laxus and the others back in the Grand Magic games, even though they're Dragonslayers, they weren't able to slay dragons. And a lot of people, they started dissing the Dragonslayers. They started saying stuff like they can't even kill dragons, so why are they Dragonslayers? And first off, I just wanted to say that there's two things for that. Number one, just because they're Dragonslayers, that does not mean that they are automatically stronger than every single dragon. Yes, that does not mean that they are automatically stronger than every single dragon. That just means that they know the magic abilities that can be used to slay a dragon. That doesn't necessarily mean that every single dragon they run across is just going to get demolished. So that was that point right there. But the second point that I want to make is for everybody saying things like, oh, the Dragonslayers never kill dragons. That's why the 5th generation Dragonslayers were introduced, because these guys are the real deal. And we've seen so far that not only have they killed dragons, but they still are on the hunt to kill and eliminate dragons. So for everybody that was doubting the Dragonslayers, saying things like, oh, they're not strong anymore, all this stuff, just because of the battles that they had, relax, because not only did they need time to train, but the 5th generation Dragonslayers, they put an end to that whole argument themselves. Now, before I actually start talking about them, I just want to do a quick little brief down on the 3 Dragonslayers. First, we have the 1st generation Dragonslayers, and those ones we know: Natsu, Wendy, Gagio, Sting, and Rogue. Those guys are the 1st generation Dragonslayers, and basically, well, really it's Natsu, Wendy, and Gagio, but I was talking about the ones from the story that's kind of looked at as, you know, I don't want to get too deep into it, but we know that the 1st generation Dragonslayers are Natsu, Wendy, and Gagio, and basically these guys, they are the ones that were trained by the dragons, and therefore these guys, they are pretty much known as the strongest group of Dragonslayers because they were trained directly from their dragons. But on top of that, we know they're able to unlock things like Dragon Force, something that not only all the other Dragonslayers can't get, but they're also able to master Dragon Force and bring out Dragonslayer ability to its best capabilities with Dragon Force. So I definitely do have to say that the 1st generation Dragonslayers, they are well off when it comes to Dragon Slaying abilities, just because it seems like they're able to get pretty much the most out of it. Maybe it's because they're trained by a dragon, that would make the most sense, but I do have to say that the 1st generation Dragonslayers, they definitely do seem to be like the strongest out of all the groups of Dragonslayers, and I definitely do have to say that it is well warranted because these guys, they are definitely my favorite when it comes to the groups of 1 through 3. And then we move on to the 2nd generation Dragonslayers, and these guys, they are highly slept on, and we know that these guys, they basically earned their Dragonslayer magic through a Lacrima. Yes, we know that they were not actually taught by a dragon, therefore they cannot use things like Dragon Force. I know a lot of people, they get misconstrued, they get confused when they seen Laxus, they thought that he used Dragon Force, but in all actuality, he was just powering up. He never said Dragon Force or anything, so no, Laxus, that was not his Dragon Force mode. But we even seen characters like Cobra who use pretty much a high amount of Dragonslayer magic, and people thought that that led to him actually having a Dragon Force, but it wasn't a Dragon Force, it was just him using his Dragonslayer magic. So the 2nd generation Dragonslayers, they definitely are hype. I definitely do like them when it comes to character, and I'm not going to get too deep into his details, but we know God Serena, he's also a 2nd generation Dragonslayer. So even though they don't have the dragons trainings, we see that the characters who are 2nd generation Dragonslayers, Laxus, Cobra, God Serena, they're able to hold their own and they're still pretty strong. And I definitely do say that they can put up a pretty much good fight against the first generation Dragon Slayers. And then last but not least, we move on to the third generation Dragon Slayers. And the reason why I kind of classify these guys as the first generation is because, number one, it's only Sting and Rogue, so it's two of them. But we know that not only were these guys trained by dragons, but they also had the Lacrima placed inside of them. So even though they did have the Lacrima placed inside them, they were still trained by the dragons. And on top of that, we know that these guys are basically just as important as the first generation Dragon Slayers when it comes to the whole story and the plot of sending the Dragon Slayers into the future. So that's why I kind of count Sting and Rogue as first generation Dragon Slayers, even though they're technically third generation Dragon Slayers, which is understandable because the only difference is pretty much the Lacrima that's placed inside of them. That's really the only difference. And I mean, it says that it gives them a slight little power up, but I wonder how much of a power up it can be, because that kind of does hinder them being able to use Dragon Force and all the other good things. But yeah, Sting and Rogue, the third generation Dragon Slayers, they are also very hyped too. Now, easily the worst of the worst out of all of the generations of Dragon Slayer has to be the fourth generation Dragon Slayers. And the reason why I'm calling them the worst of the worst is simply because these guys, they can't really do anything. Like, we see that when they were introduced in Fairy Tail Dragon Cry, they were basically looked at as filler. Yes, these guys were filler monsters, so they didn't really, or not filler, but fodder monsters. They were just straight up fodder. They couldn't really do anything. We seen Lucy, she was able to take out a whole army of them. So the fourth generation Dragon Slayers, I would not get my hopes up about them. I mean, if you want to see them, then go ahead and watch Fairy Tail Dragon Cry, because that's pretty much the only time they got shine. But I will say that the fourth generation Dragon Slayers, they are pretty much robotic people. They're not even real people, so I guess that's a plus side for them. But the fourth generation Dragon Slayers, they're not really too impressive. The most impressive thing that came about the fourth generation Dragon Slayer was them being confirmed canon, because that basically gave us insight that the movie, it can lead to new power-ups for first generation Dragon Slayers, which is a dragon transformation like Natu shown in the movie. So that was the only reach that came out of that came from the goodness of a fourth generation Dragon Slayer, the fact that the movie that they were premiered in was canon. Now, when we talk about the fifth generation Dragon Slayers, so far we have been introduced to three of them. The first one is Kyra, and she is known as the Blade Dragon Slayer. Yes, she is known to be able to not only eat anything, but she's able to cut anything. So basically, not only is she able to cut through any physical material, she's also able to cut through non-physical materials. Like, for example, in her fight versus Urza, we saw that Urza, the main thing that she holds herself up on is her pride, really. And we've seen that Kyra, she was able to cut and take away her pride. And we've seen how much of a different person she was able to become. But on top of that, we see how strong she is too, because she was able to hold her own against Urza while they're fighting. Yes, she was able to hold her own against Urza while they're fighting. So even her magic ability is pretty overpowered. So I definitely do have to say that Kyra, she does get a pass when it comes to being a new fifth generation Dragon Slayer revealed. Now, the next member that I want to talk about is Madmore, and I have to say that this guy, he was a little bit disappointing, not only because of his ability. We found out that he was an armor Dragon Slayer, and we haven't really seen too much from him, but his ability doesn't really seem too impressive, I'm not gonna lie, just because we have things like the Gagio, who's a steel Dragon Slayer, and armor and steel, it kind of goes hand in hand, to be honest. And we've seen that his defense is pretty good, but in his fight versus Natu, he ultimately ended up getting demolished. So what good is his defense if he can't really do anything against Natu? So Madmore, he did have a little short introduction, but it's not like he's gone forever. Obviously, we didn't get to see him go all out like we seen Kyra go all out. So I definitely do have to say that Madmore, there still is hope for him, but he was without a doubt the least most impressive out of the fifth generation Dragon Slayers that we've seen so far. And then last but not least, we got introduced to Scullion Raider, who is the Ash Dragon Slayer Dragon Slayer user. We know that this guy, he pretty much seems like he is the most interesting when it comes to his abilities, because he's able to turn anything he touches into ash, and he's also able to use that as teleportation magic, and we've never really seen anything like that when it comes to his Dragonslayer magic. So I definitely am excited to see what this guy can do, and not to mention the fact that he would have defeated Gray one-on-one. Yes, he would have defeated Gray one-on-one had Brandish not stepped in. So this guy is definitely pretty strong, and it looks like that he is actually the leader of all the 5th generation Dragonslayers. So I will say that this guy, he does seem pretty impressive, and he does seem like he is hype, and I can't wait to see what he can do. Now, even though I just mentioned that there are 3 Dragonslayers, the most exciting thing about the 5th generation Dragonslayers that we have yet to see is the whole guild of them. Yes, we found out that there is a whole guild of 5th generation Dragonslayers, and they are called Diablos. They are actually a guild full of dragon eaters. So really, we just got this surface scratch on us when it came to the 5th generation Dragonslayers, and really, here's why I'm excited for them, because not only are there a full guild of them, but it seems like that they're all going to have new and different magic Dragonslayer abilities. Like we seen Kyra, she has Blade Dragonslayer magic, and we see Scolian Raider, he has Ash Dragonslayer magic. Like these are abilities that we've never seen before. Even Madmore to a certain degree, armor, like that's a unique ability. So I definitely do have to say that these guys, they do look like they're going to be exciting when it comes to a full guild of them, because that just means there's going to be a whole lot of new Dragonslayers to go around. But that's basically it for this little video discussing the 5th generation Dragonslayers. We know that they are currently trying to find all the holy pentadrakes, similar to how Fairy Tail is, the 5 dragon kings, and they want to eat all of their dragon powers. Yes, they want to eat the dragon gods so that they can gain their powers. Their guild is basically known around everybody who eats dragons to gain their abilities, and they seem like they're interested in Naruto the others, so they might actually be one of Fairy Tail's new allies moving on later in the future. But that's basically it for this little video discussing the 5th generation Dragonslayers. Comment what you guys think down below. Subscribe if you haven't. Peace out.